Looking at the crypto market right now, you see a red day. XRP is down close to 5% a day, and this is what we are doing. So the pattern here looks like this, which is actually a healthy level. I would say like, okay, this is not a bad thing to look at. And yes, I agree, when the price is already doing this kind of drop, it's easy to say we are doing this pattern. But that's not the case, right? We had this thought process before. We were talking about this and responding like, yes, I do believe that's the healthy scenario. And right now, we are reaching that level of support. But if you actually look at that zone, you do see like, we can actually get a little bit lower price point at that range. And I was talking about a 15% drop in the price of XRP. So what's it doing right now from the recent top? XRP has already dropped close to 15%. Now remember, Bitcoin is also dropping. And for Bitcoin, if you look at the pattern side of things, you actually see something like this, which we discussed earlier. But right now, we are heading towards the daily moving average, 21-day moving average. But we also have to keep in mind, if the Bitcoin dominance is dropping hard, that means Bitcoin drop is not completely impacting the altcoins the way it usually does. And that's actually a bullish scenario because macro is playing out. You do have to understand, like, we have a lot of news which came into the market, like the red notices from, for Binance. And then what happens? He comes here and say that's a photoshopped image and that gets removed. So that's FUD. When you're in the market, you do have to understand what's happening, what's fundamental, what's reality, and then look for, okay, the macro is pushing to this direction, and neglect the FUD because you know what the hell is happening. You know what we talked about before and what's happening right now in the market. Dollar is dropping. That means your assets which are priced in dollar is going to skyrocket. Welcome to the Scientific Investor family, where the normal retail guys learn how to become the next top 10% of this world. We are literally observing that Twitter just put this one here, which is Doge, and I'm like, wow. And that just happens to be pushing the price of Doge to the upside. It's up 30% for the day. But look at Swipe, it's like 255% up for the week. And if you are looking at Doge, we had this thought process a couple of days back saying, okay, I think we are breaking out, and that was a breakout call saying, okay, we are breaking higher and it's going to the targets. So if you are on point and you're actually looking at the charts and you know that's happening, it's going to be helpful. Say we just saw like, okay, fine, Swipe was up to 55%, right? We were following that saying this is breaking higher. After that, these are our targets. We hit that target. Then this is the next target. So you literally see that, right? Whether it's in the first 100, you go into the next 100, you actually see a lot of assets slowly grinding up. Icon is up like 70%, close to say 60% for the week. And we had this thought process here. We are going up. Keep this in mind. So if you are actually thinking like, okay, price is showing a lot of these different patterns, what should I look for? I would say like, okay, look for either trend or pattern. If you're a pattern guy, that helps you a lot. So first, what we're going to do here is to look at XRP on a shorter time horizon, because the panic, when the market enters into that level of panic, we need to see like, okay, what's going to be the best support level which we can look for. Because in a short-term scenario, I would actually look at this, say like, okay, the market just actually did a clear move to the upside where you actually got some move which actually highlights like, okay, you literally did this run to the upside. So you got this, fine. After which you actually did a move like this. So that's like, okay, you are slowing down. You are getting a corrective action in the market, but we're not sure where the actual bottom is going to be. That's the hard part. If you remember what we discussed in the last video, we talked about what the buying zone is going to be and how high XRP can actually go inside this wave 2 rally, right? So while you look at this on the short-term horizon, keep this in your mind. This is the trend line which we are focusing on right now. And for the bottom line, this is what we are looking at. So if we drop, I'm like, okay, 0.475 is going to be a good range. I think that's going to be a healthy level of support. If Bitcoin pushes the price lower and we break that level, okay, now we are looking for the next level of support here. But what are the odds for that? I think the odds for that is comparatively much lower, because when I go on to a higher time frame and say, for example, I need to remove the noise, I'm looking at the market, I remove all these, and I'm like, okay, if you are to come down here and bounce, that still is a healthy level. Why would I say that? When you're looking at this trend, you went up, you came back down. Where did you come back to? You actually came close to test this range and then bounced off. So the next level, once you hit that level, you came to correct back down to this level. So I'm like, okay, that actually is a healthy level. Now, yeah, you had a little bit of wick to the downside, but you went immediately to the upside. So you respected this level. So that's why I'm saying, like, okay, in that scenario, if the price come back to even this level and bounce off, I'm completely happy, right? So now what we have to think about is like, okay, does the RSI agree with us? So the RSI is here. The trend line support is here. If the RSI happens to bounce from this range, it's going to be a strong one, I think so. Because the way we are looking at this, the resistance in terms of RSI is up here. So you do have some space if you're bouncing back to the upside. So it may look something like this. But usually you don't get a bounce directly. You get a consolidation or a double bottom pattern and then go back up. So expect that consolidation here as the buying zone. That's what we were discussing, like the opportunity zone, the buying zone. And if that's coming through and bouncing back up, that means whatever we discussed here on the daily is working out almost exactly. That means whatever we highlighted here on the weekly, 3-day chart, the weekly chart, the macro, all of them are happening as it is. So where will we get invalidated? That's the key point if you are a critique of what we are saying, right? So the point where you get invalidated is 0.36. If you are still following this trend line, you're not going to put in a new low here. Your recent low happens to be 0.36, and that happens to be the new level of support. So if I'm looking at the RSI, I would actually say like, okay, this is a trend line. You may actually have a correction, but that's the trend line support. If I look for what the horizontal level of resistance is, that's where we are right now. We broke through that level, which looks actually healthy, because when you actually zoom in, you see like, okay, you're going to come back down. You may even come back to this range. You may test that and bounce. It's still going to be healthy, because remember, on the macro side, you haven't changed the level of bullishness which you are up to. I see a lot of people giving you a lot of negative thoughts, but I'm like, okay, everyone has their opinion. But keep in mind that on the macro, what you see is way more important than what you see in the micro level charts. So if you know that macro level support zone is here and you look for that pattern, it may really help you. Now, if you want to get an idea whether a lot of money is coming into this asset or it's moving out, go back to what we talked about XRP Ether. We talked about the possibility of Ether moving up, XRP slowing down, and that means XRP Ether pair should go back down to where? To the actual support zone, which is here. Right now, we are moving towards that direction. And I'm like, that's actually fine, because it happens to come back down and then bounce. That's bullish. So then you need to actually go look at Ether and say like, okay, if that's to happen, Ether price should actually do what? It should break higher, it should move higher. So on a short-term horizon, when you're looking at Ether, are you watching the market dropping like a stone? No, you're not, right? XRP is down like 5% for the day. I agree on that point. But what's Ether doing? It's positive. So what did we talk here yesterday and day before yesterday? This is what we talked in detail. This is what we showed based on the XRP Ether chart, highlighting the fact that we have a possibility where Ether moves higher, XRP goes lower, and then XRP overruns Ether, right? So that's actually based on the macro scenario. We're looking for the macro charts. We're looking for the macro scenario where we get the understanding like, okay, Ether has not actually broken this level of trend line. When it actually breaks that one, it's going to be bullish. It's going to run higher. And we also clearly understand the fact that short term and long term has a lot of difference, because on the long term scenario, you do appreciate the fact that you see that you broke this level of resistance. You're above that level of resistance. And when you do that, historically speaking, you go back up. You go back up. Now, if you actually come back down to retest the bottom, what's going to be that bottom? Is it going to be like $900? Is it going to be like $1,000? I think we may, if you drop 1,300 is going to be still be a healthy level, which is about the last all-time highs here, last cycle. So that means while you do this pattern and go back up, don't neglect the fact and don't underestimate the double bottom pattern. It can happen in a lot of different ways. We have seen different type of variations in the market, like long-term one, which formed in for the bear market. And I think the short-term one is forming here for the wave one correction. And if that happens to be the wave one correction, that means whether I like it or not, Ether may be up for a big run. And based on what they are doing on the proof of stake mechanism and becoming from the inflationary idea to a deflationary movement, I'm like, okay, that can push the price up. But the SEC can screw this in one way or the other if they say, okay, proof of stake coins are a security. So you now have a short-term and medium-term scenario where you're like, okay, XRP against Ether is showing like it can actually run higher. And Ether itself is showing you that, okay, I'm going up. So what's it going to be? Because in that case, XRP has to go way higher than what Ether does to overrun the scenario. Because the trend line here shows like this. If you are moving against Ether, the max you can do in the short-term run is 60%. But if you actually happen to break that, now you go way beyond that. That's massive in my opinion. Because if Ether is going to do a 10x and XRP is going to do a 40x, that's actually a massive rally in the market which we are going to observe. Now, yes, it all depends on Bitcoin, whether Bitcoin actually goes to $90,000, whether it actually goes to $10,000, that kind of scenario. But here we are looking at recent tops, trying to see like, okay, what the hell is happening in the market and what should we look for. And it kind of happens to be like, okay, if you understand the fact that these are the level of resistance we are looking at. Now, I always suggest like go on a macro chart, drop the trend lines, then come on a shorter time horizon compared to that. Usually weekly is not considered as a short time horizon, but you get the understanding here. And when you actually count this in, I would say okay, that actually gives us more than a clear understanding that if the trend line is correct, then more or less we are going close to 100,000. And I really don't think we are actually running towards a $500,000 Bitcoin or $1 million Bitcoin unless the dollar gets devastated. Because on the other end, if you say Bitcoin is actually running to $1 million, what I'm looking at is the macro chart of dollar. Macro chart, a monthly chart. And I'm not actually watching dollar continuing to the downside in the trend line. What I'm observing is it broke through this trend line, and that happens to be showing you like, okay, wait a second, that was a macro falling wedge. We broke to the upside. We're consolidating. Yes, agreed on the short-term duration. You are literally observing a channel which is correcting to the downside, and you still have some more to the downside. Agreed. But that does not negate the fact that dollar still can actually go back up. The next bounce can be 120, 124. Wow. That means if you think like dollar is actually going to that Venezuelan currency scenario or, the World War II Germany scenario, I would say like maybe that's not the case. You really have to think twice. But yes, it does not actually kick the fact that on the macro, we are observing things like this. That actually is something which we all have to discuss because this is where population of the world lives. India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, that area. And if they're doing this, they're like, okay, we don't care about what the West thinks. This is what we are going to do to support our citizens. That means, okay, something heavy is happening. And then when you actually understand what the banks are doing in the West, you go nuts because this doesn't actually happen accidentally. They were actually putting out free money literally with a lower rate of interest, and right now as the rates went sky high, forced home sales. Now go check about this, look at this video, and you will notice that okay, something is happening. So on the other side of this, if dollar is going down, you need to be in an asset. One of the asset which I think is going to work well is this thing. I mean, wow. Isn't that a fact? And then the market, you have a lot of discussion about whether the rates are going to go down by mid this year to late this year, because a lot of people are suggesting like, okay, the market is doing this, and what can this be, whether it's going to be the Fed or the market. What do you think? But personally, I believe the free market always wins, which means even if they are going to do another 25 basis point push to the upside, the market is going to say like, okay, you do whatever you want to do, we're going this direction. And if the economy is crashing on the other end, now they can't actually do that. Because if you actually try to push your interest rates higher and higher with what is happening here in Canada, you'll see way more of the same happening in the United States, because companies like McDonald's announcing like we're going to lay off is not a small thing. And I was actually looking through that news. Let me see if I have that up here. I was surprised because this coming out now shows you that there is a lot more pain in the economy to come out at. And I mean, even Google highlighting the fact that they are having some issues, so they are cutting back on some cost. And I'm like, okay, this is the cost you're going to cut back on. So that just can be a starting point, right? And when you understand like, okay, people are actually moving into assets, now you get to keep that thought process in the alignment, proper alignment. I actually had seen that somewhere here. I forgot like where it was, but whatever. You actually get the perspective. McDonald's is laying out, and that's like not a small process. It's just starting in the corporate world where the interest rate's so high. So once the interest rate peaks, next 6 to 12 months is going to be so bad. Look at Canada. They pause the interest rate at a high. In just 3 months, you're actually observing like, okay, something is broke and you're going to have to repair this. But by the time you repair this, it can be much worse. So be in assets, not in fiat currencies, because in the short-term scenario, if dollar's dropping towards 90, now remember, we started this from 115 and now we are at 102. We're going to go towards 90. If that's happening, you're going to see bulls unleashed in the cryptocurrency market. So any short-term drop here should not actually bring in a perspective saying, okay, I'm dropping to $15,000. I'm dropping to $12,000. Because when you see 5-6% drop in the market, you will literally observe a lot of people coming out in the market saying, okay, the bears are here. Bulls are killed. But remember, this is the scenario. Buying opportunity is happening because trend is your friend. And while Bitcoin bounced back up, the Bitcoin dominance drop, you are going to see altcoins taking off. And if you are looking for things like this, where you literally know when we are breaking higher, where you know the targets, you can look at the Patreon. The link is given in the description below if you are interested. So that's it for today, guys. If you like the content, please do hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done that already. I'll meet you guys on the next video. Bye for now.